I have a theory around that, and the theory around that could explain why they're holding certain things back.
Yeah, and I could almost play a little devil's advocate with this because
they're kind of an unreliable narrator in that aspect because they do have an agenda. They're not just going to sit down and have a conversation with you just to have a conversation. Their goal is always going to be to make you happy. No, they won't lie, but they can still play within that framework.
Today, Sterling and I are talking about the hit science fiction TV show, Pluribus, Season 1, Episode 5, Got Milk.
So spoilers are ahead.
We are diving straight into that cold open.
And the section that unfolds afterwards as Carol ends up by herself because the others want space.
And the horrifying discovery that Carol makes because of that space.
And we are a small channel trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We greatly appreciate everybody that has subscribed up to this point. But if you haven't and you're enjoying our videos, then we'd really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing.
So let's get into the episode.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and jump in just like the show did with this cold open. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's kind of funny because there was definitely a moment mid-cold open that I forgot we were in the cold open. And I was thinking like, oh, are they not going to do like the title sequence to come up? It felt like so opening sequence in the beginning, like nothing was being said. They were just walking. We see all kinds of people working in the hospital. And then Carol gets that call and it's like, I just was taken out. I was just like, oh, we're not even in the cold open anymore. And all these things were happening. And I just thought we were just jumping straight into the episode.
Yeah. It brought up some kind of interesting things for me, like seeing once again, I feel like the way that the others' work is being drilled in, seeing the kid wheeling some of the medical equipment. We obviously knew that, but seeing that is kind of interesting as the others are all fleeing while Carol is sleeping so that they can, get away without her, I think kind of like objecting or saying anything. It looked to me like they were using all of the roads that they could to drive the direction that they needed to, so it looked like they were driving on the wrong side of the highway, because in this kind of utilitarian world where everybody's working together, you don't need to follow rules like one way if everybody knows that you're going to be going this way and nobody else needs to go the other way.
Yeah.
I feel like a different society can kind of emerge from this.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that were brought up into that I got from this cold opening that, we've talked about a little bit of it before, but it just really hammered the point where it does feel like conversation is just gone, right? There is such a beautiful thing about having a conversation with another person, but when you're all sharing the hive mind, none of them are talking to each other. They don't need to talk to each other. They can just do the thing that they need to do, which makes them feel a little mindless, which is a little weird. And also, it always feels like they're just working now. And so we've talked about them kind of being this slave to this hive mind and having to do what everybody else wants to do. It seems like they've just phased out leisure. Just leisure doesn't exist anymore. It's always just I have a job to do. I got to do the job. If I'm not doing the job, I go to sleep and rest the body. And then the next thing. And there's no just going to enjoy nature. They're trying to save and protect these animals and nature and the earth, but they're not enjoying it. They just have a job to do and they're doing the job. And I feel like that's really sad.
You keep saying the word enjoying, and I think that might be a key point, because I think that while there might be happiness, because they might feel like they are doing good things for the world, good things for each other, I don't feel like there is any joy in this world. I don't feel like there's any of those really joyous moments of eating a delicious meal, just enjoying a sunrise for the sake of that. It's just weird that they are kind of going about on these tasks, and that seems to be enough that if anything, they seem more content than they do necessarily joyous or even possibly like happy. Like they just seem kind of content to go about the lives that they have now.
Yeah, it's really odd to me. And like we have a holiday coming up, Turkey Day, other holidays coming up. It is the holiday season, and it's like they're not celebrating any holidays anymore. Like I feel like as a human, holidays are like a huge time to like, celebrate, get together, enjoy each other's company, eat delicious food. And again, it's like now we're doing nothing. It's like none of that exists anymore. And it's just like, I have a job to do. I got to do the job. The job is done. Next job. It's very odd.
I've got some kind of like random thoughts about what are some properties that kind of emerge from this. For instance, do you think that blind people essentially aren't blind as long as other people are looking at them, that they can basically operate their own body like in a video game from a third person perspective? That if other people can see for them, like obviously they wouldn't be seeing from their perspective, but if they have a good third person perspective of themselves, can they move around perfectly fine in their kind of surroundings? Similar thing with like deaf people. Obviously, deaf people wouldn't be able to hear, what the sounds are coming like from right here. So they wouldn't be able to use that for the sake of like positioning. But as long as somebody is next to them that can hear it, are they essentially kind of not deaf? Like, does this change what it's like to live? And then to take that into kind of like a one layer further of kind of like existentialism is what does that do to kind of define your boundary of who you are? If it seems like the limitations of your physical body aren't what they used to be, are they becoming more and more of just this one thing? And once again, kind of losing more and more of their individuality. Like it was interesting that when they thought that Carol might have been looking, then the old person was, or the person was hurt, whatever, was like using the walker. And as soon as it was time to like get out because they saw that Carol was sleeping, people just like came in to help that person move more quickly, and so like it's just interesting how things are kind of emerging from this structure.
Yeah. And, I could almost play a little devil's advocate with this because, I do think I'm still of the camp of how Carol views it, where it's just like it's unnatural. You lose individuality, you losing enjoyment and leisure. But like in that moment when they were leaving, something came to me because they were playing a song as they were leaving that was very harmonious. And so it was all a cappella, right? So it was all a cappella. And so a cappella is just a bunch of individual voices singing in harmony, in tandem to create a song, which would not be a song without all these individual voices. And same with the opening, title card. It is that a cappella, like all these singular voices forming to make a harmonious song. So like you could make the argument that these are all individual voices that are joined together to do better, but also, I don't know. I still think they have nefarious intentions. And like this, I think episode really not whatever Carol found, and we'll get to that. But when they left the city, it made me think that what if they were only there in that city to put on a like basically take care of Carol, like, right? They're keeping a city functioning over there so that Carol can live a semi-normal life. And then what if they do that for each of the 12 individuals? And when whatever cities that they're not in, or like if they have like a main base where they are doing something a little bit more nefarious that like we don't know yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I always feel like when I see them doing certain things that it just like raises the hairs on the back of my head, But then you see they really seem like they're not lying. They really seem like they are innocuous, like they are good. Like they do have these tendencies. And I don't think they have anything nefarious. I think there's just something that looks so off. There's almost like an uncanny valley element
Sure.
of just seeing things that look close enough to reality, but also like just far enough from what you know reality is, that it just makes it seem even more unnatural. And the music that you mentioned, even though it was a cappella and it was harmonious, there was something that seemed, it had a kind of a, I don't know, a weirdness, a differentness to it, that it did kind of fit for me how kind of like different the others were and gave me that similar type vibe.
Definitely. I do feel like the music choice for them was great for them leaving.
Yes.
But it does create this, it is that a cappella harmonious, but it was still a little, it created like a dissonance that was just not quite there.
Yeah. For me, it was almost like a Wes Anderson film where, it has this like certain like manicured vibes to it, where it almost is like Wes Anderson movies. He almost like creates his own world where things have a different aesthetic. People are like slightly different from like what you are used to in this world. Like Wes Anderson movies almost seem like they exist in their own parallel universe where everything is like super close to ours, but like just ever so slightly different. And
Sure.
It kind of gave me those kind of vibes of like, the look, the manicured aesthetic, the like sound of the music was just slightly different from our world.
I mean, that's how it also felt like when they were restocking the Sprouts, where it was just like, they're doing something, and it's like that was also to other music. It was not a cappella, but it was very like ants marching kind of music of just like, we're putting all these things back. And yeah, it does feel weird that like, and I think it's an interesting choice because like we don't see a lot of communication happening. Like I mentioned earlier, conversation doesn't exist. They're not like directing people. It's very uniform. Things are happening one right after the other. And so there are these little like musical overlays to like bring the scene alive, like no conversation is happening, but there is something happening, and that music almost like tells that story of what is going on with these joined.
Yeah. And you mentioned that they don't do a lot of talking. And because it's mainly just them and Carol, it means that there's not a lot of dialogue. And so when what little dialogue there is comes off like it does from the others, you mentioned the Sprout scene, and 1,000%, like when as they're leaving and they're saying bye to Carol and saying that if she needs anything they can get it for her, toot sweet. That is so off because they're doing it in like perfect synchrony. Is like as each person approaches Carol, it like switches who is talking, and that's like, conversation shouldn't sound like, people shouldn't be able to talk like that, and then like the way that Zosha talks of just like spitting out facts and like not being able to have a conversation. There's like so little dialogue in this show. And then when we get some of it, it just like sets these kind of off tones. And I love how it does that.
Same. And I really loved seeing this new side of the joined with Carol.
Yeah.
Because at first we've only seen the joined just like doing everything to move heaven and earth with Carol. And in a weird way, like the joined kind of had their feelings hurt by Carol. Like that she's kind of doing this shady stuff and seeing the joined give her the cold shoulder and then like wait till she's asleep to like book it. I thought that was, it brought a new dynamic to the show that I wasn't expecting. Like that the joined has felt so like happy and feeling good about everything. And then all of a sudden, huge pivot. They're like, we still, our feelings haven't changed about you, Carol. We just need some space. Like that's, it's such an interesting dynamic that they can kind of like play around with, of like how Carol's going to interact with this hive mind.
Right. So let's go ahead and jump into kind of the next portion after the cold open, when we see them remove themselves. And this is wild because it means that we get an episode after the cold open with just Carol. And I think that really changes the dynamic of this show. And it's also not just Carol, but I think that to a certain extent, not having them around and feeling like she has a little bit more of her kind of freedom, I think it kind of made her a little bit happier. Also having a direction of like feeling like she knows what she wants to do and she's like on a mission. I think that's helping her being focused and like making her feel better about what she's doing.
It's interesting. You thought she was happier. I kind of read it as she's a little bit less happy because she's had these people, like she's kept them at an arm's length, but yet she still has them like do things for her, like stock the sprouts, you know, help Soja, bring the grenade, you know, all these things that they have her do. And then it felt like they finally gave her wish, like, hey, we're completely out of here. And yet she kept like finding reasons to have to call them, like, hey, I need this. Hey, wait, I need this. Hey, I need this. And like it seemed like, yes, I love that Carol is focused on her direction of what she's trying to do. And I think it's giving her agency, and it's great to see her take action. I think she is doing a great job with that. But it did feel like she just kept like needing them for things, like, I need you for this. I need you for this. And like, also in this episode, I thought the comedy was great. Just
so great.
So many situations that caused hilarious moments. Like the amount of times that she had to call them, get the message, and then sit through the whole message was
and then
hilarious.
Make you sit through it every time. It builds every time. It just like gets worse and worse of having to sit through it.
And watching her frustration with it was beautiful.
Absolutely. But that's so. Maybe it's not necessarily happier. I don't know exactly what it is, but when she was reaching out to them, I didn't see it as her wanting contact, because like the way that she was communicating on the phone was like she was using like Chat GPT, like she was just like using a service, you know, like she wasn't being conversational. She wasn't nice about it. She wasn't saying, hey, do you mind if, you know, and as like, as soon as she's done, she's just kind of like hanging up the phone. It felt very much like she was just, to me, it did feel a little bit happier. Like she is like, cool, I can get on board with this, of just, we don't have to do the pleasantries of, you know, somebody actually talking to me on the phone. Maybe it'd be better if she didn't have to listen to this message. But like, she doesn't have to deal with the pleasantries. She can just get to the point, hang up the phone, and move on.
Well, and see, the way I took it was, so we saw her like trying to reach out to them in the hospital. She's like, hey, you know, is Soja going to be okay? And they all just like cold shouldered her. Right. And then once she kind of like saw
that caught her off guard, it looked like. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And then like once she kind of saw everybody leaving, she picked up the phone and she got the first message, and she didn't say anything after that one. She just hung it up right away. Like she was like shocked. Then she sees them all going. And to me, it's like, now they've given her space. And like, I feel like she's mad that they took the control away. Like she had some control where she was like, I need this. And they gave her everything. And now they like took that away. Like you can't even call and talk to somebody. You get a message and you have to leave a message. And so to me, it felt like every time she was doing this is that she feels like somebody that just got broken up with, and she is mad at them now. And so she's like being short and mean, like, I need this from you. And like, I need this. And, oh, my trash needs to be taken out. And then like, also, okay, they're going to take out my trash. I'm not going to follow like what they told me. Yeah, like that's how I kind of like, she's more mad. And, you know, that's what was the impetus to like film her thing. And she's like, you're not going to like it. You know, she just had this like very like kind of like, I don't know, childish interaction with the joined. And so I was thinking she was more frustrated that they left her.
But I guess like part of, and once again, maybe happiness isn't exactly the right term, but like focused, determined, you know, for once we're seeing her, and yeah, she did still drink in this episode, but for once we did see her choose not to drink, where she was going to, and then she chose not to. And to me, it felt like she's like taking back a little bit more control. She has a goal, she has focus, she wants to make sure that she's sharp for it. And so because of that, I feel like she's not, we haven't seen her take drugs in like the Xanax.
Yeah.
In a hot second. So I think that maybe some of the issues she deals with that she like uses the Xanax and like the alcohol for, that she doesn't want to dull those feelings, you know, and or she's like gained control of some of that, you know, and to me that feels like the most agency that she's had up to this point. And she's, you know, kind of like with her questioning of the biker, the last episode, she's being very meticulous about what she's doing. She realized, you know, from her first interaction with the English speakers that it didn't go very well because she made an assumption and she just went in there kind of guns blazing. And this time she's writing a script and she's, you know, like crossing out parts she doesn't like and like rewriting and doing edits and like taking time to make sure that she like cleans herself up, dresses up, puts on makeup. Like she's really self-conscious about how she comes across because she understands that she actually needs to, that she needs to sell herself at this point. You know, if she's going to get them to get in with what she's doing, she actually has to convince them of it. And so things feel so much more kind of like deliberate and not just kind of reactionary. Yeah.
But unbelievable, because she wrote a script, didn't reference the script, and filmed it on the first try. Unbelievable. That is not... That is ridiculous.
We did see her going over the script. So it's possible that she, consummate professional, she knows that like you don't turn the camera on until you've like done it enough times that you can do it. And I thought I saw her kind of like turn her head to the left after sections to like get a little reminder of like what the next section is. But
I was impressed that she did in one take. I don't care. Maybe they just cut out the other takes for brevity's sake. But I just thought that was a little funny as people that, you know.
Yes.
Record.
But as far as believability, unbelievability goes, like I think that one thing I really loved in this episode that I've noticed that I think for me kind of makes things a little bit more believable, a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit more engaging is there's a great storytelling thing that I've seen from the guys of South Park. You've probably seen a video short on this, maybe. They did a thing, I don't know if it was like a lecture or something like that, but they basically explained what they've learned about storytelling. And one of the biggest things that they've learned is the way that scenes go from one scene to the next scene. And if you're telling a story and you're explaining your story, and in between every scene, you just say something like, and then, that's a terrible story.
Right.
But if in between the scenes, you say things like, therefore,
right,
or but yet, you know, things like that, where it's like the consequences of one scene lead directly into the other. Then instead of feeling like you have just like a series of random things, it feels like you have like consequences to actions, and that the like story naturally unfolds based off of each of the things that kind of happens. And I definitely noticed that this time around, where because of her actions, they leave. Because they leave, the wilderness starts coming back in. Because of that, the wolves get into the trash. She has to deal with like her trash. So
because she threw out food too.
Because she threw out food. And then, you know, because of like the drone getting caught up, she ends up having to find, her not listening to the instructions about like 17 pounds or less. She ends up having to not use their services and find like a faraway trash can. And it is because of that she finds the milk. And so it really feels like there are causal links in this story. And like it would have been very easy to have her discovering the milk be just kind of like a random thing that happens, you know, where it's like maybe she like wants to do a run, you know, because she like wants to keep physically fit. And so she finds it during that. And that just would have been kind of like a random moment that was put in there of,
right,
you know, we only show this fitness scene because we wanted to show her discovering the milk, versus like the story really feels driven by all of the events. And I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and going back to that comedy of that drone trying to carry her trash, just not rushed, just took its time of how the little drone is trying to carry her overweight trash and just caught up on the light pole, and just so good, so funny.
So good. And like that was one of the moments that was in one of the super short teasers, you know, before the show came out. And I mentioned this before, where Vince Gilligan's world that he's created here, things are so weird that out of context, you see something like that and it's not a spoiler because it doesn't make sense. Instead, it just kind of intrigues you of like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
And then when you actually see it happen in the show, it's still a rewarding moment. So I don't feel like anything was spoiled by these, you know, teasers and trailers, versus normally when studios throw things in there in order to get us excited to like watch the show, when you finally see the moment, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that. You know, that's not as powerful.
Yeah. No, I think it's great that we have so little, and like some things are making more sense in the context of what we see. But yeah, I am loving that Carol has agency. I'm wondering how she's finding these places, because it doesn't seem like the internet is a thing anymore. Can't Google Maps how to get places. And I don't think they would just be running the internet for Carol. So I'm feeling like she's finding these places. She gets these address. She's getting an atlas out. Like she's putting in a lot of work to get to these places. And I mean, like, she doesn't really have anything else to do. So like she can take her time to do it. But it feels like a lot of work to find these places and travel in and out to Sprouts. And I appreciate the lengths that she's going through to like try and fix humanity.
Yeah. It makes you empathize with her more, especially since she didn't do anything terrible this episode. You know, I don't know if this is for people that have been struggling with her character before. You know, I'm curious if this episode feels like a little bit of a turning point, or if she hasn't earned that back yet. You know, maybe she needs to like take it a step further of like really doing something to redeem herself. But at least it feels like she wouldn't be further damaging her reputation for others.
I don't know if this is a turning point for people to be a fan of Carol, because I felt like in this episode, kind of like what I was mentioning earlier, like how she was reacting to everything, it did make me feel like I was like, she's really unlikable in this episode, because she's just so like, oh, and I'll stay away. And like, even in her like, addressing the other the other unjoined, she was very just kind of like snarky, like, oh, they can't lie to you. Another thing I found out, are you part of the human race anymore? Are you guys, like she just felt very snarky, very like, and I understand like she's probably frustrated, like she's going through a breakup with the joined, but like it was just in this episode, I felt like this was her most like obstinate. Childish. She's just like, well, I can do fine on my own, and this is great. And then like she's dealing with these wolves, and I don't know. I did feel like this was unenjoyable for I don't think this is going to endear people.
It does feel like she still hasn't taken personal responsibility for wronging anybody, whether it's the others or Lakshmi. Like, she actually referenced the fact that she has offended at least one of them. You know, when she's like, you know, I've met some of you, you know, I may have even hurt one of you or something like that. But she still doesn't say, I'm sorry. She doesn't say, I'm sorry to the others when they leave. You know, like, that could have been a moment to do that. I mean, it's still, as somebody who likes her, in, you know,
I still
in
like
my
her too.
defense of her, it's still only been 8 days. And this is a lot to deal with in that amount of time. And to take all of that in, like, and she's still, this is the first time that we've actually seen her cry for Helen without the use of drugs.
Right.
She's dealing with a lot. And I do think we will see her potentially realize, like, the, you know, negative effects that she might have had.
I mean, yeah, even when Lakshmi called her and was like, you upset my son, like, you made him cry, and there was no accountability there. And it was very much like, oh, Zosha's going to be fine, by the way. Like,
right.
Oh, okay, cool. Glad that she's fine. Listen, I still love Carol. I am totally on board with she's acting like a normal human being that would act around this situation.
Yeah.
But also, we know that she's a little cynical, and she is a little, you know, where she was at when this happened too. Like, she probably wasn't in the greatest mind space. And then, you know, she didn't seem happy with her life and what was going on, you know, other than her relationship with Helen. And then that's taken away. And like, so everything she has done is reasonable in my opinion. Yeah. But I do think she's being a little childish this one.
The drugs with Zosha, I don't know if that was quite reasonable.
You know, somebody put it in our comments pretty eloquently that, like, once the joined took all of their freedom away without asking them to take, if you're drugging Zosha to take her out of that freedom, like, they kind of lost the, like, they didn't ask, so she doesn't have to ask, you know, like, and I do see that. Like, again, I don't think you should ever drug anybody without their consent. Like, that's just messed up. But it's also like, if this is an alien invasion and this is a real, like, threat to humanity, and this is your only option, like.
Right. Yeah. I did like going back to the kind of the comedy of it, you know, when we first saw the drone picking up the video file. Mm-hmm. I did think that was brilliant, because that might have just been the most efficient way to do it. That totally probably wasn't the others being kind of like passive aggressive, because I don't think it's necessarily in their nature, but that does feel kind of passive aggressive of like, sure, we'll do the stuff for you that you want, but we're still going to do it in such a way that we're not with you. And sending a drone is very, I mean, that's like a robot to a certain extent. So it's like, it's a very cold way of still being gracious, you know, like, yes, they're taking care of her needs. They're doing whatever she wants, but they're doing it in like the least personal way humanly possible, where before they would always send somebody, you know, before they probably made sure, like, even when she told them to like leave the neighborhood, and so they left the neighborhood, I wouldn't be surprised if they had somebody on a post nearby where it's like, you know, you need to stay nearby in case you ever need to get in there quickly to do whatever for her. Like, right. I would, Zosha probably had a house that was like the next neighborhood over, so that she could just like come running.
Instantly show up. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I could see that. And I mean, I just felt it was like watching the join protect themselves. Like, they're upset. They're hurt by Carol. She is mean. She's mean to them. They're just like, we love you, Carol, but we need some space right now. And so like, they're just like doing the best way they can. And that's why they're sending the drones. But it does hit at that little passive aggressiveness of like, well, it's fine. It's fine. Well, and also like the whole leaving the whole city. is a little passive aggressive too. Like Carol's been in her house most of the time. You know, she goes to a couple places. You can kind of just avoid her, but everybody just dipping out of the whole city, like everywhere. It's a little passive aggressive.
Yeah.
But that also is the reason I do feel like the cities feel like fronts for the unjoined, right? Like it's kind of like a sense of normalcy, but somewhere there's like a giant hive of them that are really working on the main goals, and especially like finding out this milk stuff, right?
Yeah.
That they're not very upfront that like, oh, we don't eat like you guys, we drink this milk and it's this and like this is why we do it, like, which is fine. You don't have to tell us that, but it also makes me feel like they've told us about trying to turn everybody, but they haven't told us other plans or goals that they're trying to do, which makes me, that's what also kind of makes it feel nefarious, is that it does seem like they're holding stuff back, not telling us.
Let's get into the next section, the very end of the episode, when she makes a very startling revelation, because I have a theory around that, and the theory around that could explain why they're holding certain things back.
Okay.
Maybe.
Let's tell me this theory. I'm ready.
You know, they mentioned that they would prefer to be vegetarians, but I think it is wasteful to, you know, to be vegetarians on principle alone of, you know, like we want to be vegetarian, therefore we refuse to eat any meat, even if deer gets hit by a car, you know, and you don't want to, like, as a vegetarian by like that kind of nature of like, I refuse to be a vegetarian, you wouldn't eat that deer. But if a deer gets hit by a car and you are a vegetarian because like you think that is the best thing for the earth, you don't want to personally kill, but it got hit by a car, then you would potentially eat that meat. And I do wonder whether or not they are, for the sake of practicality, because it would be extremely wasteful, they're eating the 11 million or more people that have died over time, and that is what Carol discovered.
That's kind of what I was thinking, that it was that they're eating people. When it first happened, there was already a lot of processed meat. And I don't see them being wasteful. So it does feel like they would eat that meat. So the whole thing of that fine granular powder, it feels like they maybe found a way to take the nutrients of all of these different foods and powderify them, put it in water.
I don't think it, like, I don't think that things need to be yummy. So I think you could potentially freeze dry a lot of things in order to, you know, make them into non-wet solids that can last in storage for prolonged periods of time. And then once they are at that stage, I don't think it would be very hard to run them through the same type of like mills that you use to grind down grains. And so that's, I think, potentially what is going on. Is it just like, it is the extreme version of utilitarianism.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I took it too. Like, it did seem like she walked in that freezer, there was an assortment of all different fruits. And that's like, it does, they did kind of paint this as a very like nefarious thing, that they're drinking this thing. And maybe it is different, because you would think that if they were, you know, freeze drying, smashing all these things, like the color of the powder wouldn't necessarily be like this white substance, and then putting it in water that creates this yellowish substance, straw colored straw. And that it is a little bit like thicker than olive oil. So there are these things that make me feel like that might not be it, but I do think it is set up to seem scarier and more evil, when it's probably just, like you're saying, the efficiency of how they consume food.
one indicator that like helps point to the fact that they might be using people is if you go back to episode 2, the vehicle that Zosha is loading the bodies in says Lettre du Levant, which means Levant dairy. So they're loading the bodies into a dairy truck.
Interesting.
And I think, they certainly haven't lied about it, but nobody has asked the question, so they haven't had to answer the question. And I think that, maybe they kind of lied by omission. They hid their nutrient intake because that would cause questions to come up, and then they might feel obligated to answer the questions. And answering that, I think, would be something that would be very horrifying for the people that haven't been infected yet. And
especially
so
if they're
in
using
order
people. Yeah.
Right. So in order to like just avoid that situation, in order to keep the others happy, they hide that, so that like they do that in spaces away from kind of eyes. That speaks to like extreme utilitarianism, because if you look to utilitarianism, it's a philosophical ethical theory that holds that the most ethical action is the one that maximizes overall happiness and well-being for the greatest number of people. It is a form of consequentialism, meaning the morality of an action is judged by its outcomes. I think that could also explain, if they do believe in utilitarianism, that could explain why they focus so hard on the last 13. Is right. Like, if they have this like psychic glue that allows them to like kind of come to a consensus about, their own happiness of raising that as a group, then the only way that they can really like move that dial higher is by taking care of the last 13. Mm-hmm. That's why they focus so hard on their happiness. Like normally I think when people aren't connected, focusing on an individual in order to make them happy is like a drop in the pond, because if you focus all of your attention on one person, it means that you aren't focusing on all these other people who are starving, dying, so it's like that doesn't increase the overall happiness, is to focus on one person.
Right.
But in this case, there's only 13 people that they need to focus on, that in focusing on them, they can raise the overall happiness.
I could also see an argument of the hive mind doing stuff that might seem nefarious to an individual's perspective.
Yes.
That they might do for the sake of like, like we see them, they're very focused on like, they don't want to harm people, but they like haven't given any stipulations. Like what if they're fine with harming people that, like we mentioned before, are blind and deaf, that take a little bit extra, like something that as a person in the collective might need a little bit more work, or, somebody that is, has no legs, like they can't do something as effectively, or somebody that like weighs 900 pounds and can't get out of bed. Like, what if they like cull these people because they're like, oh yeah, they're great, we love all life, but they're really not helping the main goal and the service of what we're trying to do. And so it's easier to not have to process their, brain power. And so we just kind of got rid of all the weakest people. Like I could see that's something that they do to like fit that utilitarianism.
I think that because they have one mind, one goal, I think that they can find things that everybody can do so that everybody can have positive input, and nobody would feel like they are not doing something consequential, because really that person is everybody. It's not that person is getting singled out. If somebody
right.
has any kind of disabilities and gets kind of put on what we would consider like a menial task, it's not that person actually getting singled out and getting put on a menial task. That's everybody is getting on that, Mm-hmm. That person's mind can still work on something else somewhere else. and can contribute to the overall good. So I don't think there's necessarily a need to like cull the weak. I think that, they can find jobs for everybody that makes it so that they're like maximizing efficiency. And by doing that, they're making the world a better place and raising the overall kind of like happiness or contentness of the collective.
But I'd almost make an argument if somebody weighed 900 pounds and like they can't get up, they can't do anything. And imagine having to devote so many resources to this 900-pound person, and pretty much all they could use them for would be their mind. But if you have 7 point whatever billion other people like using that exact same mind, you're devoting resources to keeping somebody alive that's not doing anything. Like, and if you're trying to be most efficient as possible, you would think that like, all right, well, we gotta get rid of these people. I don't believe any of this. I'm just saying that in a.
So I think, maybe a better example of what you might be kind of saying is, instead of somebody who is like that level of obese, maybe instead somebody who is dying of some disease, whatever the highest stage of cancer is, I think probably like stage 4, terminal cancer, where that the outcome is death, and that to a certain extent, the treatments then become to minimize pain.
Sure. Yeah.
And to sustain life while it is still possible for that person to continue living, without having to like literally be plugged in. But still, they might at that point they might still be using a lot of resources. And in that case, that person might be there because they're potentially scared to go, and, possibly because like they care about the people around them and they don't want to go for those people yet. But if that person's consciousness and memories are already uploaded to the others, maybe there's not that sentimentality and there's not that need to, this sounds heartless, and I'm not saying I agree with this.
Right. That's exactly.
At that point, maybe there's not the need to keep grandma around, and it would be better to just let grandma go because all of her thoughts and memories are still here and she can just go at that point. That might be the case
that's what I'm saying. What if they make those judgment calls on people that maybe we wouldn't make those judgment calls on, right? Like yes. Stage 4 and grandma, they're on their way out. Maybe an easy decision. But like, right. What if somebody that has no arms, no legs, they were born that way, or even a paraplegic, right? Right. If you're completely paralyzed from the neck down, like really all you can use is that person's mind. But if that mind is in everybody else, like what benefit, what work are they doing? Or is that just going to be something that you're putting more resources into that's not putting output of resources? So it is like, I could see that this hive mind might make some decisions like that if they are totally utilitarianism of like maximize input, maximize output as efficiently as possible. What can we cut? What can we not cut? Like I could see some nefarious to us.
Well, I was about to say that depends on your viewpoint at that point, because some people can see that as terrible to look at like the output of a person and what they can do versus the fact that that person is an individual and just still matters regardless, especially for the individuals that haven't been taken in. That could look horrifying to them, that potential outcome could be a possibility for the people inside of there. If they have accepted that way of thinking, they might be totally okay with that. They might have drank the Kool-Aid, and they might, understand that they're hindering the whole instead of helping it. And so they might be like, look, we've all accepted this, and this is the way it is. And sure, go ahead and just stop worrying about me and I'll die naturally. So this kind of goes back to like what I said about, my theory on like the twist is there is no twist, is I could see a lot of things like this that are very surprising to us, but they aren't real twists per se, as much as they are things that you may not have considered that arise naturally from this.
Yeah. This is one frustration I have with Carol, and I understand why they do this. But I would want to ask it so many questions. Like, we know it can't lie, and I would just be like, okay, like philosophical questions. Like, what do you think? Like, as an unjoined, I would want to ask the joined, like, what do you view of death? What is your view of like how you guys die, like as an individual or as like the hive mind? Like, what does that feel like to you? Do you believe in an afterlife? Like, you have people that were religious that joined, atheists that joined, agnostic that joined. Like, do you lean towards a certain religion based on how many people were in that religion when they joined? Like, what are your thoughts? Do you have a knowledge of something that happens afterwards because you're so connected and smart to the universe? Like, I would be asking these hard-hitting questions because I feel like knowing they can't lie.
I do and don't agree with that. I think that Carol potentially is doing the right thing, or thinks that she is doing the right thing, because if she's worried about like their end goal is we're going to turn every single one of you, then kind of like what she mentioned of you don't ask a drug dealer to explain their heroin. She doesn't want to get taken in by them. She doesn't want to get like tricked into thinking that what they are doing is good. And I think that the more that she humanizes them, the more that she connects with them, the more that she'll be like, maybe this isn't all that bad. And so she might be like her cold aspect might be less of her being a bad person that's treating them like crap, and more of like a protective barrier. The best way I can not get like taken in by this cult is to treat it like it is just absolute garbage. And that's how I'll have that buffer to like not get kind of tricked. And so the agree with you part is I want to have these conversations. Yeah. I want to talk to them. I want to know what are their like, when we get 7 billion heads together. Yeah. What's your thought on religion? What's your thought on, philosophy? What should I take away from the series, The Good Place? Like, break that whole thing down for me on like all the levels. 1,000%. I'd be asking it so many questions. That's like, if I feel like I'm not in danger.
Sure.
If like Carol, I think, my life is in danger, and the best thing I can do to protect it is to have a certain distance, then I think that potentially what she's doing is the right thing, of treating them like they're not.
100%. I think she is doing the correct behavior. She's doing all the right things, but I just want to know. I don't care about Carol and her existence. I want to know like what they want. Like, once they change everybody, what else would they want? Like, what are their goals? Like, how do you enjoy these things? Do you get enjoyment? Like, what does it mean to be happy to you? Like, what is this bliss? I feel like some of the other non-joined people have asked this and have gotten better understandings, but I want to know. I want to know these things, and I know why Carol's not doing it, but I want to know.
But then here's the other aspect is, we've seen that they can be disingenuous, that while they like will never actually lie to you, they will hide things from you. They won't say certain things, whether it's because of like their biological imperative, whether it's because they are worried that it's going to upset you and they want to like keep that overall happiness up. It does kind of make you wonder how they can obfuscate by doing that. So to a certain extent, they're kind of an unreliable narrator in that aspect, because they do have an agenda, right?
Right.
They're not just going to sit down and have a conversation with you just to have a conversation. Their goal is always going to be to make you happy. No, they won't lie, but they can still play within that framework. So really what we need to do is like, we need to find and capture Vince Gilligan and sit him down and ask him these questions about how they work to get to the bottom of it.
Yes. But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you folks so much for joining along with us. Come back next week as we will dive into episode 6. But until then, I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.
Oh, wait. I do one little joke I want to talk to you about that I thought was clever.
Yeah.
When she's like, oh, let me check my notes. It's 7.1. Let me check my notes. It's neutral. It's basically neutral because 7.1 is basic. Like technically anything above 7 is basic. Anything below 7 is acidic. And she's like, basically neutral. So I love that joke. I thought this was a funny episode.